Ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, and welcome to a series of interviews with artists and companies who will be appearing at LiF 2024. These conversations about their experiences, influences, recommendations, and we hope capture insight into folk about their work and their passion for improv. A big thank you to Rowena Gander, who will be performing at LiF with Freeing the Body with the Pole. Their show starts at 1:15 on Friday the 19th of April in 1 hour sections till 5:15 at the Unity Theatre. Tickets are £10 or £6 for Creative Pool members and can be purchased online at www.unitytheatre.co.uk. You can check out their show and the rest of the festival lineup at www.liverpoolimprovfestival.com. You can follow the festival on our various social media channels, which are on the website. Thank you and enjoy.
Okay, hello and welcome to Rowena.
Hello.
Hello. So we've had a brief kind of catch-up chat. Full disclosure, I do know Rowena. I've met her on a number of occasions. So, but I wouldn't say necessarily know her work that well, but we will, and that's why we're kind of here today, is to kind of chat a little bit about Rowena's practice, her work. We have last year we really support people who work in a spontaneous way, so that's not necessarily comedy improv or clown or things like that. So I'm really excited to have this piece of work, which Rowena will talk more about. So kicking off, I did send you some questions through. We might not use them all, but Rowena, tell me about the first live improv show that you watched, where and when. And I think our audience, our watchers, will kind of work out where you come from in your practices.
in my lovely Scouse accent. So the first time I was exposed to improvisation or dance improvisation was during my undergraduate degree in dance practices at Liverpool John Moores University, and there was a touring company who came in to perform for us. It was an ensemble cast of about 5 performers, and I don't remember the name of the company, but I've got this image of them in my head, and I remember thinking, like, wow, like we found this moment so spontaneously, and I was kind of hooked on improvisation from that moment. And I was really interested in how the moments that were less virtuosic fed into that moment that was just so beautiful and could only be found in the moment. So that was the first time I was exposed to improvisation, and I've been watching different improvised shows since then in different mediums, physical theatre, comedy performance in your festival, and any type of dance performance I can attend, I will, if there's a live show.
So in that moment where the dancers, so there's a big clue to what you're going to be bringing, which we're really excited about, because you will be our first improvised dance piece that comes to the festival, which is I'm a big fan of dance. I work for a dance organisation. I used to study and perform ballet, so dance is a big part of my life. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it now, but certainly movement is something that I watch, how bodies move in space. I've seen a few things of contact dance, and the moment because in contact, is it that they always must stay in, they must touch in some way, shape or form? Is that right?
I don't think you necessarily always have to stay in contact, but I think it's about just feeding the information off each other through, either the gaze or the touch. Yeah, that's what I've gained from it. But I work with contact improv in a different way because I utilize it with a pole, and I only get the feedback from like a static object. Whereas when you work with a person, it's a much different experience.
So one's one's warm and live, and one's cold and dead.
Yes, exactly.
That's really interesting. So in inanimate objects and how you interact with that, that's fascinating. So in regards to, you said about the gaze. So in terms of the pole that you work with, how do you clearly have a strong relationship with it? Is it a love-hate thing, or is it this is a tool, or is it called something? Is it like, people name their cars, which I've never really understood, but yeah.
I haven't named the poll, but maybe I will in future. And I would say it's all of the. When I first started working with the poll, I seen beyond a sexual aesthetic,
Yeah.
and it led me to look into like the cultural biography of the poll and all of the stigma that was attached to it and how it might be exploitative and silencing towards women. But as a gay woman, I wanted to go in and be like, okay, well, I reject the male gaze. I reject the phallic connotations this object carries, and I'm going to use this as a way to fuel and raise my voice as a practitioner, as an artist, because I felt that from improvisation, actually, I was able to say a little bit more. I was able to go beyond that sexual aesthetic and say what it was that I was reading from it, like from a cultural biography sense.
Yeah. Because in circus they have like sway pole. Have you ever tried that at all?
A sway pole.
Sway pole. So it's a pole that actually it's like a giant fishing rod that actually bends, and it creates.
Oh, I've seen them. I haven't tried them.
Oh, it's
It's amazing,
else.
isn't it?
Oh, and they're really really tall.
Yeah.
So, so I've seen some of the photographs that you've published from when your previous tour. The name escapes me, so apologies, but I'm just like, wow, the athleticism of being able to do something like that is phenomenal. So is there a process when you're working on a piece of work such as this, where is there a concept behind it? Is there a set of, because in most improvised work there is some sort of structure which might reveal itself or not. The audience will, as we all do, look for patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that's similar, or is it just I'm going to do as many moves as I think as many things as I can remember, and whichever order and pattern that they create is the result of your work?
Is the work, yeah. No, I was thinking about this earlier actually, because when I utilize improvisation as a compositional tool, I will have like a structure to work within. We'll have a theme. With being the body with the poem, I will be reeling off as many pole moves as I can remember, but to the point of, okay, I've exhausted all those options. What now? So what now? I mean, I don't know. Like that's the joy of this spontaneous performance. I don't know how many I'm gonna do. I know that I've got like a track record of rehearsal where I can last for so many hours, work improvisationally. So I know I've got the capacity to last for 4 hours. But I'm very interested in, okay, what's gonna come when I am tired? What direction is the duration of the work going to take me in? Because most pole performances last, between 4 and 7 minutes. And my previous show, Barely Visible, which I toured, which I think you were referring to then,
Yeah.
was an hour performance where I manipulated the pole and constructed and deconstructed it as though it was a phallic object. It was a metaphorical man, and I was shouting about lesbian sexuality. So yeah, I guess in this performance, I'm not seeing it as, okay, this pole's got a particular meaning. It's more about, okay, well, what is my relationship to this object? What is my acquired movement language with it? And how can I pull that apart to empower myself even further, just to speak even louder?
So at the end of it, and hopefully we will catch up and that you're not so exhausted, you're just crumpled going, but I'm hoping that it succeeds in that you find something new, and I think that's the the brilliant thing about improv is that idea of you're not quite sure what you're going to find, but you know when you find it that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a euphoric moment every time, isn't it? And it's just like it's so addictive. And I'm thinking, how many moments am I going to find within 4 hours where I'm like, woo! Even if it is like, physically demanding,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because of the training that I've done in dance. I wouldn't exactly position this as like a dance performance per se. It blends dance, it blends performance art, it blends theatre. And I'm just happy to see where those disciplines take me or not.
Because there's in sort of improv in theatre, there's a couple of that are returning, and they perform for 24 hours and they do 1 hour segments, and the description of when they sort of hit 21 hours is that they're so free that they have this huge surge of energy and almost like time stops. So they describe it as what's it called? There was a TV show where they step through like this portal and it takes them to other worlds. Stargate. So they step through, which is a sci-fi show, but they describe it that is the feeling, and they almost become otherworldly, that they step out of themselves as they move through that. So I think I mentioned this to Lee when I spoke to him yesterday. So Showstoppers are doing Improvathon at Wilton's Music Hall in London, and one of the guests, so it's director led, so they will call out the theme or the scene or who's coming into scene. So Mark Ravenhill's doing, I think, 4 or 5 hours as a guest director. But it sounds, there's an equivalency there where you get to a point where actually you stop consciously thinking about what you're doing and then allow that to flow.
That's the beautiful moment, isn't it? I think whenever I've watched improvised dance and I see a performer completely let go, that is like a magical moment always, and that's always been a key theme. Like whenever I've watched improvisation, I see someone let go, and there's the magic. And it's the same for myself when I'm not thinking about outcome, when I'm not attached to, is this entertaining, is this gonna lead to anything? Because when you let go, actually that is what it's leading to. So
So in terms of post performance or post afterwards, will there be things where you kind of go, oh, I found that, we've documented it, and I could use that and develop that as so I know that you make choreographic pieces where it is learnt and it is done in. Do you think that that's something, or is that something you're hoping to find, or
I'm trying to let go of that outcome, but if I do find things in the performance, then I will utilize it, because why not? I might only take it to like 50% of its capacity within that particular performance, because that's what I'm thinking of at the time. But then when I reflect back on it, I'm like, okay, I could push that so much further, and that's just the composer in me, I suppose, and saying actually, like, I can pull a little bit more from that and edit it. So maybe there is another piece of work on top of it.
Yeah. So in terms of composition, is there, because there's either sort of interpretive, so we've got the kind of idea that we've got this theme and we're going to interpret that theme and we'll create a series of motifs or whatever it might be. Apologies for appalling understanding of dance, but I'm essentially drawing upon kind of my limited knowledge, but the idea of motif and then repetition and various things like that, and then you kind of go, oh, there's that little set of beats. Is that something that you are conscious of, or is that something that you're kind of trying to listen to what your body's saying, so acting on impulse, or is it a blend of all of that?
Yeah, I'd rather act on impulse because I think it's more authentic, and I think in terms of dance composition, it can be sometimes restrictive to what you actually want to achieve as an artist. Like if I put myself, so I do actually teach choreography, and there's all of these different structures and methods that you can use to curate a piece of work. You've just mentioned repetition, for instance. Some people would expect to see repetition. I don't necessarily need to do that. I don't need to abide by any rules. And I think the way I work is like, okay, improvisationally, what happens in the moment? And if that moment means something to me in the moment, and when I watch it back and it still means something to me, then it's like, that's the gold. So it needs to have meaning behind it. And you can utilize like choreographic tools to get to that place, but working spontaneously is better for me, I think.
Okay. Oh, that's really interesting. So there's I would sort of say the parallels are fairly similar then, in the sense of kind of acting on impulse and working in the moment, and what how much do you think that's intuition or instinct? Is that something that you kind of think is, I've gained that from training and I've got that body of knowledge, that sort of DNA within me, and then part of it is the bit that's you, as you said, the authenticity. So how does that blend, or is it difficult to unpick? I know that's quite a complex question at 7:30 at night.
It is a loaded
apologies.
question. I think, I mean, like that's what I was talking about before, about that acquired movement language that I've got, especially with the pole, because when I'm working with my body up the pole, there's definitely a technique that I have to adhere to hold myself up and to stay safe. But there's times when I'm so rehearsed in that particular technique where I can go beyond it. And so the more I improvise with the pole through those positions, that's when I'd get something else. However, when I'm lower down or on the ground and I'm only in contact with the pole with like a certain part of my body, then I can allow that conscious decision to go, or that I can use my intuition a little bit more and I can take more risks.
Oh, okay. So in terms of risk, because walking out on stage, not knowing that you're going to do something, and you know there's a beginning point and an end point, but you don't know what's going to happen in between, feels very scary. Certainly to do it for 4 hours.
Yes, it certainly does. But I'm excited about that challenge. As you know, recently I was performing Marina Abramovich's work at her solo retrospective in London. And there was one work in particular called Luminosity that was really, really challenging. It was 30-minute duration. And I'll just, for context, I'll tell you a bit more about it. So there was a bicycle seat 2.5 meters high on the wall. You used the ladder to climb up, and then you positioned yourself on this bicycle seat with your legs hanging. So all of your weight would have been in the genitals, and then your arms are by the side of your body, going up over your head and down to the side for 30 minutes. So whilst it looks fairly easy, it was absolutely not. And every time I went to perform that work, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But actually, I got through it every single time, even though it was painful, even though it was physically exhausting, and even though I didn't know what was going to happen from, in the middle part, like, was I going to be able to do it? Like, okay, yeah, I can do it. But one particular performance was very challenging. I accidentally got onto the seat wrong, and my body was like convulsing because I was in so much pain and it was so physically hard. But took a breath and got through it. So I think if I can get through that, like completely exposed in front of hundreds of people for 30 minutes, like I was naked as well, there was literally nothing to hide behind. It makes that start to finish within this 4 hour of, freeing the body with the pole seem a little bit less scary.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got to the extreme ends, and now you're just jotting down a bit to kind of go, yeah, I'm gonna be sound. There's nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing. Yeah, I'm kind of going. So, in terms of the audience, what's the relationship that you envisage? is it that they're voyeur to it? Is it that there is potentially participant, interactive? What is your, or you just don't know at the moment? Is that?
I think I definitely want to connect with the audience. I don't want them to feel like they're just voyeurs in the space. I feel like that's really important to me as a performer, to include the audience in some way. I don't know whether there'll be active participation with them on the ball because, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a conversation with you for risk assessment.
Yeah.
But I feel, I mean, I feel like anything's possible.
Yeah.
And if there's a strong pull for me to invite someone like onto the pole with me, then maybe that will occur. But I don't plan for it.
Okay. Okay. So so in your brain, so you've in my yeah, I think in pictures. So I have this. I kind of can see. I can see this performance sort of shaping in my mind, in a really short, truncated way. The if you could kind of go right, here's 1 minute. I'm going to talk to the audience, and this is my sales pitch to them. What would it be?
I would say come and watch an authentic performance where defenses might fall down and you are left to view something that's absolutely real. There's exhaustion, there's physicality, there's magic, there's spontaneity, and there's an involvement with you to give me energy back when I need it.
Oh, lovely. Well, I have to say, I'm extremely excited to have you come join us. In regards to sort of contact dance and improvisation, is there anything that you lean upon in terms of influences or books that people might be able to check out that you kind of go, this is if you're really interested in contact dance and wanted to apply it in, I don't know, improv theatre, this would be a good resource to go and check out? Is there anything that you'd recommend or something that inspires you that kind of goes, oh yeah?
Yeah, there's a really good journal article that I read a long time, and I often like revisit this text. And it is more about taking improvisation or utilizing improvisation for composition, but that's not to say it can't be used just for improvisation. And it is in research and dance education. I'll send you the full link so you can add it to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it talks about free and structured improvisation and how you can work with expressive impulses through your physicality.
Because there's definitely a movement away from, certainly in terms of theatrical improv or as they call it, narrative improv or dramatic improv. There is a move away from text, which is really interesting, which is the idea of what you started to, and this is why I was thinking it might be a useful resource to share, is that idea of gaze and how you connect with somebody else. And then reading, sort of listening with the eyes and ears. So so you're almost looking for the micro gesture. That is the offer, not the text. And that's the starting point. So there's a lot of silence in terms of just playing, because people fear silence because they feel it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But actually, silence can be really powerful if it's genuine and there's an authenticity where there is a real connection. So I always sort of cite the reason you don't really hold gaze more than 30 seconds unless you're lovers or it's a mother-father relationship with a baby. You don't really hold eye contact for that long, and actually doing that as a starting point to find what is going to emerge in a similar way is that idea of that contact improv, where you're kind of going, it's the gaze, the connection that triggers what is to happen, and you're almost tuned in to watching the micro gesture of what might be the next impulse or the next connection or the next movement that you might put in there. Is that fair to say? Is that sort of broadly a comparative?
Yeah, I would say so. And it's just like actually taking me back to something we were talking about earlier with regards to my relationship with the spectator. And so I would be looking for that micro gesture from the spectator. Like what information are they giving me? What energy are they giving me? And how can I take that back into the next whole movement that I'm going to perform?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and how does it feed into it?
So Joe Tomarco performed last year, and she has a similar, or she had a similar thing where she's going, I look at the audience, and it's not what they tell me, it's what they show me. So the how she, and in a very similar way, how you've described, that's the next step. So what is that something that you've found or developed, or is that something you had in you where you kind of go, I'm looking for something, almost like kind of looking for what is someone offering me to then utilize?
I mean, you can kind of gauge like who is interested in participating because
Mm.
you know it is about that gesture. If someone's looking down and looking away, the chances are they're going to be challenging to work with, live in the moment. But if someone's upright and ready to go, and you feed off each other. So in Barely Visible, there was some audience interaction, and I would always have a very quick scan of the audience to see, okay, who can I who can I choose to work with in this particular section. So that was structured, but there was never one person I was going to definitely go to. It was like, okay, the first few rows, I'll look for someone there. And then I would just feed off their energy within that script or that part of the show. But I think in this performance, I'm really interested in holding the gaze with the spectator, maybe for even longer than 30 seconds on the parts where I might need that little bit of rest. That's when I be energized by looking at the spectator.
Okay, so there's a I used to do a bit of street performing, and there was a really old guy who taught me how, if people want to play, so he'd make eye contact with them, then he'd turn away, and he'd come back, and if they were still looking at you, that was someone who wants to play.
Yeah.
And I did follow that advice for a number of years, and it does work.
You've just
Bizarrely.
said that so much clearer than I did, but yeah, that's exactly it.
So yeah, he was a really old guy, a juggler, uh, uh, and yeah, he was amazing. He used to do reverse juggling. So instead of juggling up in the air, he had like bouncy balls, and he'd reverse juggle on the floor. So they come
Wow,
in. He was phenomenal. He'd do Chester and Edinburgh and all sorts of things.
brilliant.
Oh, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember, but yeah, I took, that was one thing I took from him, which I thought was really interesting. So next year, Rowena Gander, you are guest curator for LiF 2025, and I work on the idea of spontaneity in all its forms. Whoever, art forms but they work in a spontaneous way. Who would you bring? Money and is no object. It could be they could be alive or they could be dead. You can bring anyone to come to LiF 2025.
Okay, I would choose a combination of people and a combination of artists as well. I would choose Marina Abramovich to discuss the duration of the work and the overall concept. I'd invite Tracy Emin to be completely unapologetic about what's been put in the space, especially in terms of being a woman and everything she stands for. And I would invite Crystal Pite, who is actually a choreographer and not a performer, but I've seen her perform to perform the work spontaneously.
Wow.
That would be an epic combination. I'm really serious
That sounds
about
like an Arts Council application, along with the Tate, along with the RCA, and kind of pulling, or no, Manchester International Festival. There
Yeah.
you go. You put that bid to them and kind of go, right, we want to pull these three people in a room and see what happens.
Oh, I think it'd be
That
exceptional.
would be unbelievably cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just picturing it all in my head now. That would be amazing. Right, okay. Well, we'll see if we can make that happen for you. I can't promise, but you never know. You never know where these things end up. So, in terms of dance, crossover into improvisation, spontaneity, where do you think that community is headed in the next sort of decade, in the UK or internationally? I don't know if is the US, Australia, is that a big contact?
I think more in Europe, it's quite big. I know improvisation is quite big in dance in Berlin.
Okay.
And I know there are a lot of people in Liverpool trying to raise the game on dance improvisation. Mary Pearson being one of them.
Okay, I saw Mary the other week actually.
Yeah, she's inviting a few different international artists to come over and deliver dance workshops on improvisation. So I do attend some of them. But my hope for it is that just more and more people studying technique are invited to take part in improvisation and to really become liberated by their own voice through their own movement. It's not necessarily about a stylized form. Like we all have subjective bodies. We all have the ability to speak through our body, but what is it that we actually want to say? And I think if we can get that message out to other movers that actually your body is enough, like your physicality is enough without that stylization, then we can start making excellent work.
Very cool. So I know you remember, because obviously the dance agency in the region sort of closed, and that there is a collective that has emerged in Liverpool that is now taking over some, the dance spaces and various things like that. Do you want to briefly talk a little bit about that and what's your role within that? Because when I saw that the dance agency had gone, it sort of didn't surprise me, but at the same time it was very disappointing to know that dance wasn't going to have that potential agency to represent them. So it was extremely exciting to see you taking dance as a solo performer on a national tour, which it's very rare that it happens. So congratulations, and that's amazing, because that's kind of almost unheard of these days. It's either a large ensemble or it's London based. You don't see much dance out on the circuit just because it's really difficult to book, and not all theatres are set up for dance.
Yeah.
So, not sprung floors, hard concrete with dance floor over the top.
I've been on some floors in my day.
So what's your role within the what's it called? What's your sort of role? Is it just is it a kind of is it a sort of collective? What's the kind of how does it operate?
So it was Merseyside Dance Initiative, and then it rebranded to Together, and then it closed as Together, and we reopened as 24 Hope Street. And when I say we, there's me and a collective of 12 other dance artists based in Liverpool and one technologist, which is Noel Jones. And we're all just working on a voluntary basis to keep the studio open. So the studio is staying open through commercial income, through studio rental, and we are just working to keep the space alive for dancers in Liverpool. I think it's really, really important to have a space where experimental things are happening, and where there's a community of dance practitioners specifically to collaborate and to feed off each other, particularly professionals who are making work. And it's so beneficial to have that peer-to-peer review, isn't it? From other industry professionals. So that's where we're at right now, but there are exciting things coming in 2024, including performance nights, workshops, skill swaps that will be presented live in the studio space, and a podcast also.
Yeah. So I was so pleased because I did have a brief connection with MDI for about 6 months to a year where I worked there, and I was sad to see it go. because I know, or I was tapped into a load of that dance community. Less so now. Much of them are much older and stuff, and I was aware of Ludus and Cheshire Dance and various things like that. Northwest Connection. I mean, Leap Festival was always extremely important to showcase dance, because a bit like Improv, it's sort of got a niche, and it has to survive in a festival, because unless you're, you know, Matthew Bourne and it's a commercial entity and you can afford to, you know, go here, there and everywhere, it's a struggle. So to collectively bond together, I think is an amazing achievement. So well done to you and all of your collective. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Because we're kind of, I've sort of exhausted all my, I've exhausted my brain. so apologies.
I would say, just come and see this performance. I mean, the audience is invited for all of the performance or snippets of it. And I don't expect people to stay for the full duration, but you might see something truly different to what you've seen before if you do stay for the entire duration. Because you'll see that shift.
All right. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I know you're extremely busy and it's late in the evening, but I really do appreciate your time, because I think your thoughts are really fascinating, and I was aware of what you were doing and stuff, but you know, I have to say I'm super excited to have you part of the festival, and I'm amazed. I'm just really chuffed that we've got this opportunity, because it's not going to happen elsewhere. So I'm just like, yay!
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me.